hats, yeah, running car dealerships to being to running an NIL collective and
Yeah.
being an Iron Woman.
So, and actually running.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually running.
And actually running.
Yeah,
Here's my
so
dog. My going to be on the thing with us.
of course, of
Yeah.
course, we knew you would be joined by
Yeah.
some pups, so
Yeah.
that's awesome.
She has opinions.
So I guess I can jump right into it. I wanted to a lot of what we've been doing on this channel, obviously throughout the entire year, we've been following UTSA football, and obviously with college football, just in general, you can't go 2 seconds without hearing the word NIL
Yep.
or the transfer portal.
Right.
And there's all type of mess, craziness that goes on behind the scenes with a lot of these just everything that's around some of these collectives. And you hear a lot of the rumors with some of the bigger schools and things like that. But I wanted to sort of kind of give you an opportunity on this channel, because a lot of folks have been having questions just throughout the season. What is 210 Inspired, and what's the overall mission of the collective?
Yep. So we are one of three collectives in San Antonio working with UTSA students. And 210 Inspired is me, Martin Salinas Jr., Pat Kleins, and Savion Harris is our latest board member. We thought, why not have a former UTSA football player to help guide us? So we basically turned NIL into a nonprofit. Originally, it was a company would basically pay to use somebody's name, image, or likeness in their advertising, right? Like I'd give Rashad Wisdom some money, say, hey, can you either on your own promote Ansira once a month on Instagram for X dollars? So that would be how it originally was supposed to start. But then there was a bunch of people who are like, well, wait, I want to help, but I don't have a company. I don't have any way to endorse somebody or, make a transaction like that. And so collectives were put together for the fans, essentially, and those that wanted to help NIL and to get players money in their hands, be able to participate. So basically, name, image, likeness was put together for players to be able to profit off of themselves, like they felt universities were profiting off of them prior to this, right? Now, they always said that was already happening behind closed doors. But this basically opened it up and made it a legal practice to do it to make the playing field fair. Now, in our situation, since the collective is a nonprofit, you have Joe Smith, who's like, man, I just really want to help attract the best quarterback we can. And that quarterback is asking for dollars because now it's a competitive job field. How can I help you? Donate to this collective. When said quarterback gets here, we basically give the money agreed upon in the collective. In exchange, in order to make it a nonprofit, the quarterback agrees to either go to the food bank and box up some stuff, maybe Haven for Hope and talk to the kiddos there, or post on behalf of a nonprofit. So they actually have to do volunteer work, nonprofit activity in exchange for the money for it to qualify as nonprofit, and then you can write it off.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this question. This is one of the things that I've just been sort of unaware about. But does the collective directly pay the player to go do these things, or is it a situation where the collectives, are in, have partnerships with companies around the city that would, they basically help these guys get brand deals? Like, could you kind of provide some clarity around that?
Yeah, I think at first we were trying to navigate, since this is such a new landscape, if we would do that. And I think if it was large enough, we could probably handle something like that. But there's simply too many organizations with moving parts that actually those individual companies are better off contacting the player through direct message on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. They'll all answer. All these individual players will absolutely answer you. And so they make the offer to the player. The player goes to UTSA. UTSA has a compliance manager who actually reviews it before they. Yeah, it has to be reviewed and okayed by UTSA before they can go forward. Once the contract is reviewed and okayed, the player comes back, says all good. I don't know. They probably don't want them to do something nefarious. Maybe like, hey, this weed company, which wants to, maybe they want them to stay away probably
Right.
from something like that. That's what I'm guessing.
Gotcha.
Just to make sure there's nothing nefarious, right?
Right.
Also that their students not being taken advantage of. They want to look out for the student as well. Prior to now, a coach wasn't allowed to be involved in this at all. The school wasn't allowed to be involved. There was a law just passed last year that they can now be directly involved without there being an issue. I mean, it's
Directly
crazy.
involved in what way? So does that mean the coach?
He can broker a deal.
Really?
Yeah, he absolutely can broker a deal, and it's totally legal in all of the state of Texas for every single coach, right? Every
Wow.
university coach. It was against the law prior to that to have anything to do. He
Right.
could just say, "Please donate," and that's it. But we deal primarily with individuals, like I said. If a company wants to donate and is like, "Don't worry about getting anything back for us.
Right.
We just want the nonprofit side of it." Great. But we don't want to get into the mess of, hey, can you be here to shoot this commercial at this time? We're the grassroots organization of the three. We have almost no overhead. As a matter of fact, I use my own money to cover overhead. So
Gotcha.
your money goes directly to the players, right? Someone donated the website for free. And so we wouldn't want to involve ourselves in those logistics.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't know that though that the guys had to get something approved from a compliance manager at UTSA. That's new information. I had no idea that was the case. So one of the things I think I wanted to sort of ask about is some of the biggest challenges, right? Because obviously UTSA in our situation, there are schools like we've seen with Trey Moore in Texas. When these guys come knocking, they probably offered him a boatload of money. We've seen what happened with Cam Alexander. We've seen what happened to Zakari. The prior season. I know those are big challenges, but what big challenges that is not sort of like public that you guys face in trying to navigate this space?
One of them is that these are very young men dealing with contracts. And so this is a very new world to these young guys. They're like super money opportunity. But I'm not quite sure. I think we need to help, okay, this is how you navigate a contract. This is what is required of you and what happens if you breach a contract. And I mean, it goes with, an extension of that, any contracts in regards to those contracts. So like if I were to do a contract with a vehicle, now that's a whole nother contract with a contract that I have to explain. So I think that's a difficult part to navigate. I think another part is actually the Trey Moores aren't the common narrative, right? The actual thing that we're doing, which was one of the intents of NIL, is they're paying for their bills, these guys. And it's tough because they're also trying to help their families back home. And so getting them to navigate through the money that they're getting and getting them the money that they need to stay in football is actually even a challenge in itself without even going to fight these other schools. Because they got to pay rent, they got to pay insurance, they got to buy food. And if you have an academic scholarship, you have time to go get a job. You have a sports scholarship. Guess what? On your off time, you're playing the sport. And you're only having like some basics covered in your classes, not all of them. So actually getting them enough money to be able to continue football, it is a problem in itself that I think a lot of people think we're just rolling it and handing these guys and they're buying these cars. And that's not the case. It's a struggle just to keep them from struggling. And I don't think a lot of people understand or know that the Trey Moore case is a rare one. Now, for the people who are like, man, how do we keep that talent here? We really do just need to focus on being competitive in the American. It's going to be hard to come up with that UT money.
Right. Of course.
You know, unless we find a billionaire in our alumni roster somewhere. We're still looking every day. There's got to be a billionaire that graduated in there somewhere.
Right.
But, you know, there's still people breaking the rules. There's pre-poaching, if you will, people being talked to before they're allowed to be talked to. Yeah. I felt it with some players that left. I could tell that they were already being offered something, and the player was negotiating something with me before it was time. They gave me a date. They said by Tuesday. I got them what they wanted by Wednesday, but they were gone.
Right.
So, I'm like, whoo.
Yeah. So without going into specific detail, what is that situation like, right? Like a player comes to you guys and says, hey, I someone from a bigger school has offered me this. And, you know, maybe that player wants to stay here at UTSA, and they say, hey, you know, I won't take that situation if I can get X amount at UTSA. What does those conversations like? Is Coach Traylor involved in those conversations at all? Like, is there sort of like a boardroom of you guys putting your heads together, like, okay, let's find the money to get somebody so we can keep them here?
Yes, to all of those. Before that wasn't the case. Before it was legal, it had to be the board members, like basically having those conversations, which made it so tricky. That was tough. We all have things we're doing, jobs. Heck, Pat lives in Houston. Martin was most of the feet on the ground, the guy who's every day in practice. So he was the easiest person to have those conversations with. But now those conversations are had. It is, who are we going to ask? We're really trying to get into a fundraising type of event platform. Because right now we're still on the let's ask our friends. And we tap those big alumni donors that are really excited about football, and they come back with substantial checks. We can't always get there, but right now there's somebody who's like, I really want to stay and I'll stay for X. And we found X. We literally went out and found the money to be able to make it happen. A lot of times it's Martin, Pat, and myself dumping our own money into it. But that's exactly why we got to start having more events to like a fanfare. People feel a part of it, which is really tough when you're for people grassrootsy and you want the money to go to the players, but you know you got to start spending it on marketing and other things that are
I can imagine there's just a lot of conversation about, you're right, how much do we spend on trying to get other folks involved? How much do we spend on getting, you know, one of the things I have that on the list to talk about too is your everyday average person who their donation is just as important as the big chunks of donation, because if you're donating $5-10 a month or something like that, that stuff builds up over time. And it also, you know, once that compounds over time with many and many people, you really do something big with that sort of thing. But one thing I want to go back to is the players and the contracts, and that whole situation. Or is there anyone advising? Is there any sort of advisor group set up for these guys to say, like, hey, like, you know, maybe you should save a little bit of your money and don't go blow it all on a weekend or something like that?
Actually, they just came out with a release. I'd actually have to look into my phone to see what it's called, that UTSA is partnered with something like Locker Room Financial or something like that. They are literally bringing financial folks that can teach all of the athletes to better manage their finances. Because I was getting a lot of calls from some players around Christmas. Because for whatever reason, how they lined it up, their money that comes in from the school, since school ends early in December, it usually comes the 30th. You get like 2 checks in January. And they're not planning for this. They're still getting all their money. It's just 2 checks in January. They didn't wait. They didn't save anything for December. hopefully these financial management folks will come in and be like, y'all knew December was coming. You got to get ready for it in advance.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then go ahead.
You know, I was just gonna say, I think that is important. I remember whenever I was coming out of UTSA and playing there, I remember the first thing that smacked me in the face was like, we weren't in the NIL environment at the time, but like whenever I graduated, I remember life slapped me in the face, and I was like, oh, I don't know
Yes.
how to properly manage my finances right now. Like, how the hell do I pay a bill? Right.
Yeah.
That was one of the situations that
That's
I
right.
was in, and a lot of my former teammates were at this, you know, in the same situation. And I would always wish, like, hey, I wish that there was more of a hands-on, hands-on guidance as these guys become seniors and transition into the real world. But now you have to move that up with NIL being here, because now guys are managing money at 19, 20 the second they get in.
Massive amounts. And just explaining that they're all getting a 1099. And I don't think that they've all okay, great, send me the piece of paper. They get the piece of paper. I don't know that they need to file that with the IRS. I'm not sure they've gathered that money is now taxable income. Right. So you do have to follow up just on the 1099. But I realized that when I sold some of them a vehicle, right? Mm-hmm. And not just one, several called me a month into it. How do I make the first payment? And I was like, oh boy. But at the same time, I remembered I got out of college and I went to go buy a house. And I was like, you got to put what down? What's this mortgage insurance? Who's the titling company? Why can't I just pay you? I was like, isn't there a class in college where they teach you life? Right. And I felt like, okay, these young men were in the same position buying a car, which is not fair because I grew up buying a car, so I knew. But they're in the same position buying the car that I was when I went to first buy my house, and was shocked, and then one more time shocked, and lost. And those things are just not taught. Hopefully this financial literacy locker room, something that UTSA literally just signed up with only yesterday, will help them manage these things and understand contracts that they're looking at, the money that's coming in, and what to prepare for.
Gotcha. Another question I have, just generally about NIL. You see a lot of discussions. I think something just happened with the Florida quarterback. And I seen it over the news. I didn't read it in too much detail, but you hear stories of broken promises, bad deals, tampering. What are some ways to avoid, like, how do you guys navigate that sort of thing? And do you guys also hear from other collectives some of this stuff going on?
We only read it in the papers. I wouldn't say the three collectives that we have here, that doesn't seem to be a tremendous issue. It is up to the person who executed the contract in this scenario. I feel like these are young folks who are busy and distracted to follow up and say, okay, you said you'd post this month. I haven't seen your post. Normally they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry. And they'll do their post if it's with a company. And from the NIL side, we haven't signed a contract. Says these are your responsibilities. This is what you need to do. If you do not do these things, you will not get paid. And that's why for the NIL contracts, it's month to month. You do not get a lump sum in advance. So we're not worried if you don't do your job the next month, because if you don't, guess what? You're not getting your check. Simple as that. And so that takes care of it. And from the player side, saying the NIL didn't honor something. This is the difficult part. That's the contract, right? If you need a contract as a player, and that's why the compliance organization at UTSA says, let me see your contract before you sign up for this, right? So they also, like I said, they don't want their players taken advantage of either. They don't want them involved in something nefarious, but they don't want them to be taken advantage of. So they need to review that, both sides are going to be taken care of. And if it's a solid contract, you can hold somebody's feet to the fire and be just fine.
Right. So
you can't promise in advance. That's illegal stuff. You can't mess with. You can't mess if somebody's engaged in illegal activity, that contract is non-binding for both parties.
Right. Yeah, I think that, like, now that I'm understanding some of the contract side of it, it's probably, if you're entering into contracts with young kids, there are going to be some mishaps there because they don't know what they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So
You have to poke them.
Right, right, of course.
And they don't balk at it. They don't. They're like, oh, my bad,
Yeah,
and it's quickly
right.
resolved. It's not.
Yeah.
It's really a non-issue. Now,
Mhm.
some things I hear is so and so promised me this if I came to this school and they didn't give it to me. Well, nothing's guaranteed until you get there.
Yeah, yeah,
You
100%. I
know?
think that right there is something that I feel like it's probably happens a lot. A school will say, "Hey, you could probably get up to this amount if you transfer to us," and then they get there and guys are, they
So
feel
while
screwed.
a coach can be involved in the talks of
Right.
all of this
Uh,
and the information, none of it is, and only during certain time periods, right? There's only certain time periods you can have these discussions at all. And it's when they're in the portal, right? I think that's when
mhm.
they're in the portal and they're making their decisions. I'm not sure. I know there is. I promise you, Jeff is following the letter of the law, but it's nothing is concrete until that contract is signed. So
Right.
nothing is guaranteed. It's just a discussion until
Gotcha.
that person arrives, and it's not a contract and it's not binding.
Gotcha. How aggressive is UTSA in some of these talks? So like for example, if we're trying to get a player from from a smaller school, right? That let's say there's a guy who from a 1AA that we're looking at to transfer to UTSA. Are we sort of aggressive in some of those talks of saying like, hey, there's this type of earning potential, um, or would that be illegal? Is that illegal or no?
Yeah, you're not really supposed to do that
Not
with high
supposed to do
school
that.
kids. Yeah, I think you're supposed to. I th- I think you have to wait.
Well, it seems like it seems
You
like
can,
they do that,
not
right?
while they're in. I don't think you can do it while they're in high school.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Well, let's say
you,
it's a D2 player.
yeah,
Let's say we're looking at a D2 player who's maybe a, I don't know, sophomore,
yeah.
and we want them to transfer to UTSA. How does that work?
I think most of the conversations are more or less like when you can't talk about it, when you're not able to discuss stuff like that, the conversations usually fall on the players themselves because they can talk all they want
Gotcha.
about. So come out, meet some of our players, and and I always divert to Rashad and Frank. They can tell you how life is for them at
Right.
UTSA. They can tell you about the support that they have, and so those are the kinds of things you can do when they're in high school. When it comes to the money portion of it,
Mhm.
is you direct them. I am not 100% sure about when you can't talk about money in high school and when you
Right.
can't, to be honest myself, because that's not the part I engage in or deal
Yeah.
with. I know Martin and Jeff navigate that way better than I do. I'm like the
Gotcha.
marketing cheerleader, whatever part of it. But there are appropriate times and there are not appropriate times. And
Gotcha.
I know during the non-appropriate times, any discussion is usually held with the other team members, locker room talk.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Um, Outside of that, I mean, Jeff is a really good recruiter. You can see since he's been here, the folks that are in the NFL draft and are able to do that. And now we even have examples of people who left for bigger dollars, maybe a bigger school, and got lost in the mix and the opportunities fell by the wayside. So you can see, well, what if I had stayed at UTSA, took a
Mhm.
smaller sum, but my gosh, my all eyeballs would have been on me during the NFL draft,
Right.
right?
Right.
The kids actually have to weigh that, like, okay, better coach, better environment. I'm going to settle for maybe less because I know UTSA doesn't have as much as UT because I get lost at UT, sorry. Blah, blah, blah. But you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
It's
Um,
it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I want to talk about the three collectives. You mentioned that before. Do you guys work in unison? Like,
So
how does that work? How does the
yeah,
relationship you
so
guys work?
Runners Rising was probably the first one
Mhm.
that popped out because they just got it together quickly. They are a little bit more spread out, which I love. They have somebody from all other, like the baseball, softball, basketball. They're spread out, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. They have some football as well. So if you're feeling like, you know what, I need a little bit more diverse reach, that I think they would do a really good job. 210 City Fans, run by Bob Wills, and he has them do volunteer work for the PM group in return for the money that goes through 210 City Fans. Now they are jacked up, built up. So you're going to get a t-shirt. You're going to get like sit at a table with the player. They also have overhead, right? They have, but they have a lot of expenses to overcome, but they're a flashier product, to be honest. A very flashy product. And a good one too. And a good one. He has come to the table with some life-saving dollars. Now the cool part is our grassrootsy group that actually has a pretty good handle on some funds from the folks that we know and from the donations that we get, like you said, $5, $10, $15 on Twitter. We paired up with 210 City Fans and got like maybe a third more tables than if it had just been 210 City Fans by itself at the inaugural kickoff luncheon that we had. So 210 Inspired teamed up with 210 City Fans, and I'm happy to team up as many times as he wants. And we got the sales from the tables we sold, and 210 City Fans, their tables, had a great event. Like I said, a player at each table, lots of swag, lots of talk. And I think that raised about $300,000 total. For both. So that was fun. There's no competition. We all just operate a little bit different. Probably we have a lot more flexibility. But that's really all I would say.
Gotcha. So you mentioned that event where y'all raised that $300,000. I'm assuming that's why you said earlier, like, it'd be great if we could start doing more events to get situations like that. That makes total sense. So now what I will do now is, if you haven't seen my show before, what I normally do is the audience asks me a ton of questions and I roll through them and I let them sort of frame the vast majority of my conversation. But I had a few things prepared that I want to do for the first half. Then we'll now turn it over to the comments that we have. We have quite a few.
Okay.
So let's start. I'm going to try to filter through these the best way I can. Let's see. The first one is from Ernesto Diavilla. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
From a while back, I give to NIL, but how can I get more involved? So essentially, how can you get more involved?
Well, right now, as far as NIL is concerned, there is no true volunteers. However, like I said, we're kind of grassrootsy. I would say if he has any skill set, web design, marketing, something that we could use to grow without creating an additional expense, I think that right now that would probably be the best way to get involved as far as us. Down the road, we will be having more events, probably not for Ernesto per se, because we already have that luncheon that we have. But the one we have coming up is going to be a women's football clinic. We're going to call it Rowdy Women's Football Clinic, hopefully at the end of July. And that's going to be put on by Ansira for 210 Inspired. So, and that's going to be at the facility at UTSA, the race facility. So, but once we have those at a low cost, getting involved like that would be awesome. But for now, if you have a skill set you think that we can benefit from to grow, I think that's the best way. You just direct message myself or Martin on Twitter or Instagram. I'm not really on TikTok. I'm too old.
TikTok, I stay away from TikTok because once I get started, I can't stop. So
yeah, that's my dad. So how am I saying I'm too old? My dad's almost 80. Sends me 5 TikToks a day. Batfoy
says, does 210 Inspired only give to UTSA? I heard of San Antonio-based collective that gives to other San Antonio schools.
There might be some. Ours is just UTSA, and primarily football. So if you make a donation to us, it'll go straight to football. But where we see best, you can actually pick a player. You can designate money to a player, but it also has a selection. We've had some people donate to women's basketball through there.
Oh,
So
nice.
all you do is pick women's basketball. I'd like to give this much, and we get with Karen and her team, and we see, okay, here we go. We have some funds, and we get them straight to the basketball team. So we have that capability. We're just, trying to do football for right now. But
Right.
yeah, there are other collectives for other schools. We're having a hard enough time just with UTSA.
Right.
So if we ever get to the level we can add, great. Right now, we're strictly UTSA.
Gotcha. And I want to ask a follow-up question to that, in regards to how you guys determine. I am a believer, and I think JJ and I were talking about this last week, but I think if you start with football, especially if you kind of turn it into a football
Yeah,
school, it'll help elevate the entire athletic program.
hands
Do you
down.
guys kind of see it the same way?
Hands down. In a lot of speeches that I've given, I've noticed that as football has been elevated, all of a sudden people last year were like involved, but now they're getting stuff from UTSA athletics. Well, hey, look, have you seen the girls basketball team? And boy, they went on a tear postseason, and then you can see, oh my gosh, you see these guys at tennis, how far they've gotten to into the tennis playoffs, and all of a sudden you start getting more feedback from UTSA on athletics, but then you start picking up on, wow, look, holy, I had no idea. And more people started attending. Oh my gosh, girls soccer won the championship, right? Last year. So it absolutely was drawing more eyeballs and more fans to the rest of the sports. I think even volleyball, girls volleyball, had some records broken this year in attendance. I don't want to say even. They're wonderful people, but I'm just really bad at volleyball. It hurts my head. And I think that's where I was coming from. And I love their coach too. She's brilliant, just brilliant. So no doubt, I believe I stole this from Red McCombs. I stole it from him. He says that football is the front porch to the university, right? We have this whole great house, an awesome backyard. Let me welcome you in with football. And I totally believe that.
Yeah. I'm a little biased, but I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Let's go down to Randy here. Randy says, "Hello, I would love to know a little bit about UTSA licensing and where the line crosses with licensing and NIL."
Yes, you cannot use it without buying it. You cannot. You have to purchase it. You can purchase it in several different ways. You can purchase it for 1 month. You can purchase it for a year. But for example, 210 Inspired, you will not see Rowdy on our stuff.
Okay.
I can't use UTSA. I believe, I don't know if this law changed recently or not. When NIL first started, a player could not advertise for a company wearing his UTSA jersey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was that tight. So you'd have to have Rashad in some blue and orange generalized jersey, right? Like just,
Gotcha.
and you would hopefully, he's so recognizable, you realize, that's Rashad from the UTSA Roadrunners, right? That's what you're hoping for, or you put it on the bottom of the screen. But even players, I think they're trying to fight to be able to let them at least wear their uniforms. But as I last heard, I don't know if that's come to fruition or not. They still may not be allowed to wear their stuff. I can buy the licensing and use it for 210 Inspired. 210 City fans did that for the luncheon. And
How
so,
expensive were the licensing fees?
you know what? I don't know. It is not inexpensive.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think it's more than a few $1,000s, more than for sure. I mean, there's things we can do. Like I have licensing rights through my sponsorship for my Sierra. So, and Sierra can host an event, and then decide to donate it to 210 Inspired later. I think But you have to be careful. I don't want to do anything wrong. So we want to be here for the long haul. So we got to make sure that we do everything the right way. And if that's the right way, I might go that way.
Right.
But that's it. It's pretty strict. Pretty strict.
Gotcha. Ernesto asked another question. He says, why can't the city of SA government pitch? There's millions in marketing and eyeballs when games are televised.
Yeah. So I don't know that. Well, I tell you what, I did have a U.S. congressman, not with his U.S. Congress money, but he did buy a table to 210 the luncheon. Wow. Really? So they could probably in somehow in that respect. His kids went to UTSA, and one goes to UTSA right now. So that was pretty cool. But actually the mayor, I think the mayor and Judge Sakai also spoke at the NIL luncheon. Oh, wow. Yeah, they were also there. I'm not sure how their funds work that they could donate to the collective. That would probably be difficult, but they do participate in a different way through the bonds we vote on. The race facility was partially funded by the San Antonio government. So as far as recruiting is concerned, if you were to have a football player, a facility is just important, right? So they walk in and they're like, whoa, these people got it going on. I got my trainer here. I got the little hot tub where I can run, without issue for physical training. Right. You've ever been in that race facility?
It's insane.
It's insane.
It's insane.
So if you can't necessarily direct your dollars to NIL, but you can to facilities, I say the money is being very well positioned as far as recruiting. So I have no qualms about that sort of participation.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of piggyback off of that too. I'm thinking about the city. You hear a lot of folks just talk about, well, the city needs to get behind the school. The city needs to get behind the school. What's kind of your sense of that? Do you feel like around I don't live in San Antonio anymore, so I'm not there as much as I used to, but do you feel like the city in general is starting to embrace the football team a lot more? Yeah.
I do. Somebody else had a different feeling. I was I wanted to up the marketing last year because of the year prior. And of course, when you want to do something like that, they end up making you in charge of something. Right. And so I ended up being in charge of the marketing committee for football. And in our last meeting, we had somebody who was new to UTSA athletics there said he didn't see much downtown. He didn't feel embraced by UTSA on game day. I feel differently, and maybe that's because I'd been where we were prior to this. I see the flags on the buildings. I see them on the billboards. I hear the mayor saying, okay, let's go blue and orange. The mayor actually single-handedly is in charge of the lights downtown. He actually turns them on and changes the colors. I was like, so who does that for you? He's like, I do it. I flip the colors. But he does. You think he'd have somebody do that for him, but he's in charge of the lights. So if you don't like the lights, that's who you call. Right. So Mayor Nierenberg, has them on occasion for different things. Do the light. We got a river parade. That was awesome. We got a river parade. Luckily, nobody jumped in. But I'll tell you what. And I am blessed to be in the position I am. I get calls from people, from the mayor, council, whatever, asking, how we doing? How can we help? How we doing? Right. How can we help? That's good. What do you think's going on? Do you think, even some of them are like, you think Jeff's really going to leave? Is there something I can do to keep him here? They called me thinking Frank was going to leave last year. All the same people. So I personally know they care. I see them at events. I see them talking about it. Groundbreakings for race facility, changing the colors, river parades. There's definitely room to grow. They care. They know what it means. And that's what Harvey Najum. So he came in and made all those donations. And I know he's not on council, but he sees the same. They're all starting to see the same value. He's like, well, now I know what the thing is with UTSA. You make UTSA football better, all of athletics is better, all eyes are on UTSA. UTSA does better, San Antonio does better, right?
Right. Right.
Huge, massive circle. He's like, and now that we're looking at it that way, now I want to take all these kids in San Antonio and send them to the football games because maybe they'll go someday. Maybe there's more attention to it. Maybe, who knows? Everything's doing better. He goes, but I want to be a part of all the eyeballs, all the marketing, all the stuff going on. And that's also why he donated several million to the football thing. Wow. Because everybody's recognizing, hey, this ain't just about football, people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. The next one is from Carol. Carol says, what are some examples of jobs that an NIL athlete may sign a contract to perform?
Okay. So most of them, as far as jobs that are not in the collective, because ours is in the collective, it is a volunteering thing or highlighting a nonprofit, right, on your social media. So you either go to the food bank, you go read to kids in school. That's the thing you do if you sign up with 210 Inspired.
Gotcha.
Outside of 210 Inspired, the number one job is advertising, marketing, right. That type of deal, right? You're on the commercials, you're pushing them like, boy, I sure love this can of string beans by Myers String. And Myers String Beans is sending them some money to do this Myers String Beans. But what is available that you can do that they couldn't previously do that is not done is you could say, you know what, I need somebody to mow my lawn. Literally, they couldn't do that before. Wow. Yeah, like technically they would look at it as, well, what if you pay them $5,000 to mow the lawn and now that's how you're using them to pay them under the table for going to your, but no, now you could pay them $5,000 to mow your lawn. Wow. So it could be literally anything legal. Anything legal you can ask them to do. I always feel like I have to say stuff like that. You're in the car business. You got to make sure. So yeah, they literally, I mean, the sky is the limit of what you can think of to offer them, right? If they agree, they have to agree, sign a contract, whatever. But it could be an actual hands-on job. Wow. I need to wash cars. I need you to wash cars at this thing or whatever. So, and if they say yes, then here we go.
Wow.
That's your NIL job.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Frank says, I just graduated. How can I donate to NIL?
Beautiful, Frank. Thanks for asking the question. 210inspired.org. Again, 210inspired.org. And 210 is the numbers 210. The word inspired.org. Can you see? I'm like, this is me spelled out in cursive. 210inspired.org is the place to donate. Sometimes, because we're grassroots, our website goes down. Just let me know, tag me. It's usually something easy to fix and we can fix it. Or I can, we can pick them up at UTSA at one of the practices if you ever want to come out or something like that as well. But literally 210inspired.org, we are taking $5, $10, whatever it is. We'll take it. Every little bit helps. Like I said, the main story is not the Trey Moores, and he's incredible. And we do want that money to keep, right? But the main story is the guys who honestly don't come from a background, that was lavish and amazing. It's usually they're sending some money back home. They still got siblings back there, still going to school. And then what they've got left is going to, some bill or expense that they've got today. That's really what we're doing here. And those are the stories that really win, because there's been people that have been, coach, listen, can't play football anymore. I got to go make some money. Right. That's a common story, and we don't want that story. We want these kids to be out there playing football.
Absolutely. Let's see. We're going to stick to questions. Okay, so Batfoy says UTSA has not auctioned authentic game used football jerseys and helmets in years. Will that ever come back?
Sure, we'll make it come back next year. Done.
Perfect. Done.
Okay. Let me see. Let me get on it. Yeah, no, really, it should. And I don't know if they did it. Was it online? I can't remember. Or was it usually that kind of stuff I'm used to seeing in the Alamo Dome. Like in section 210, you'll find all these auctioned off, blah, 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 blah. At one time, 210 Inspired wanted to do that, and we were nixed at the time because that's when UTSA couldn't intersect with 210.
Okay.
Now that we can, that could be a possibility. But regardless if it's for us or at least athletics, it should be done.
Gotcha.
And so I hope they're saving some. If not this year, next year, because I don't know if they saved any. But I'm going to definitely work on it for next year to get some in some corner, if that's not already in works, because that's part of the discussions we usually have in the marketing committee is exactly these discussions.
Perfect. We're getting things done on Roadrunners.
We're getting that. We're
getting it done.
Can't wait for game day already.
All right, Aeneas, former player, he says, how much money is actually available to a player while they're still a collegiate athlete? From my understanding, a lot of the money is in escrow, but seeing some of these players flex, I don't know about that.
Okay, is he talking solely about NIL money?
I'm assuming he is, yeah.
If it's just NIL money, it's $0 to a bazillion dollars. Wow. There's not a limit. That's the problem. There needs to be a salary cap. I know they probably don't do that because, again, they want to be able to make what the university's making off of how talented they are, how popular they are. And it's hard not to agree, right? And I also can't blame anybody for wanting to take that money. But really, there is no limit to it. And there are some that are more in demand. It's like any job. The more in demand, the higher you get paid. The bigger the celebrity in Hollywood, the more they make on a film. It is no different than anything else on how it goes. So, but as far as a cap, there isn't. And there are some people out there who can absolutely flex, especially at those bigger schools. So that flexing is legit. They're getting paid that money from either a collective or doing something on the outside, and none of it's on escrow to be received later or whatever. It's unless that's how the contract's set up. We pay every month. Hey, dude, you're going to get $250 every month from us. Just for example, that guy gets $250 from us every single month. That's it. That's how it goes.
Gotcha.
And
and so I have a question, kind of a follow-up to this one, but I have this in my notes. I was going to ask this earlier, but we started talking and I forgot. There's a lot of question about our athletic director and her involvement in some of this stuff. And it does not seem actually, I won't frame it that way. I'll just say, do you guys work with her at all in this?
One of our first meetings was with her.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and actually even Bob Wills, who runs the other one, was the one who worked with her on the licensing initially and getting the lunch together and having her speak. Oh gosh. You asked a question, which is one of those questions that anyone being interviewed never was always like, oh man. I'm going to say this. I'm known for being quite candid, right? I think the struggle for universities in general with NIL, and I'm talking about right when it happened, right? Is it almost looks like it could turn into cannibalism very easily.
Gotcha.
Well, hey, we're trying to build a basketball facility, right? Now all my money that would have been allocated to basketball has gone to NIL. And in San Antonio, we are not Houston, Dallas, where there's a lot of pockets. It's like the same 5 people in every single room donating. And it really feels that way. So it's hard once you get the money out. You feel like, oh my gosh, how are they going to double what they gave? Are they going to give 10,000 to the facility and 10,000 to NIL, or are they just going to give 10,000 to NIL and now I have to go find this 10 somewhere else? And I think when NIL initially launched for a lot of athletics departments, that was the scary part. And I still think it is kind of a scary part if you live in San Antonio. Now, I'm not going to talk for Lisa. I'm going to let Lisa do all her talking, all for her. I feel it's usually unfair to guess what somebody's thoughts are. But I feel comfortable saying that a lot of universities had an initial fear of the cannibalism issue, especially if they were incredibly large. If you're really big, let's go back to UT, then yeah, there's probably double the funds. Great. So we already have funding. There's probably more to fund this. Let's capitalize it. I've noticed that some schools have actually gotten together with like they partnered with the NIL. Then you can tell through their marketing that they're pushing out. They're like, come do this and it'll help athletics and this NIL, and they'll do some joint marketing with the NILs that they work with. And there are schools that have embraced it faster than others. And said, taken probably like, well, if you can't beat them, join them, right? And hopefully it'll pay off for them, right? Hopefully they'll see that no, people are just more excited, more engaged. But yeah, that's probably where
I feel like, and this is me talking here, but I feel like we'll be in a better situation if that happens at UTSA 100%. And I just hope that we can get everybody on the same page so we can, improve and continue.
And I don't think there's a dislike for it because in order to get key players, you have to have the dollars. So if you push too hard against it, then you're going to end up without funds and without the team that you want to have, and they won't be performing where you want them to be. And so all the facilities you're building up will be for what? And so you can't hate them. However, yeah, I'm sure like in any relationship, there could probably be a better marriage of the two.
Of course.
That we can continue working on and see what we can do together. But I feel like that started with the luncheon. She got up there, she spoke at the luncheon, she did a great job. So if we can keep that progress going and have the folks that are in charge of development over there, which is an incredibly important, hard job, to fear less, then we'll do okay, and we'll be able to improve on that.
Yeah, I think adaptability is great, and hopefully we're making progress toward that. Let's see a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up here. Randy says, can each donation be a tax deduction?
Yes, it is. That's the benefit of it also.
Gotcha.
So since it's a 501c3, you can write it off at the end of the year. Woo! Sorry, that's so just super exciting. But if you're a business and you're doing it from a business standpoint, you can also write off advertising. So
gotcha.
Either way you look at it. But that's the importance of it, because if you don't have a business, but you want to participate, well, now you have more incentive to. You can write it off and help UTSA.
Right, absolutely. I think we'll wrap there on the questions. Any parting thoughts, parting words? I'll definitely add 210inspired.org. Yes, I will definitely add that to the description of this video. So everyone who follows up and watches, just check the description. You'll be able to link to donate to April's Collective will indeed be there. I'm going to continue to encourage people who come to this show every week to make a donation, because our donations count. You don't have to walk around and have $50 million in your bank account. You can have whatever in your bank account and make a huge contribution. And I think folks need to hear that, though, right? I think everyone talks about donors, and they're only referring to the big fish. And I'm like, the small fish matters too. So,
well, there was a presidential campaign, and I usually say who it is, but I just won't this time. Or maybe I should. Anyways, well, I'm not saying I voted for the guy or didn't vote for the guy, because it has nothing to do with the conversation. Okay, this has to do with me nerding out on fundraising numbers. And it was Obama, right? And he was one of the first presidents to grassroots fundraise, right? And of his, I think like 60% of his donations were $50, $60 and under. 60%.
Wow.
Do you know how many millions and millions and millions here is? Something like, I don't know, 60 million, 70. It was huge. And that just really blew my mind and opened my eyes to the grassroots donor. And I know I said the average was 50. That means there was 5s, 10s,
Right.
20 happening. And so those donations, like you said, especially with a school as large as UTSA, man, they can add up. So, and I encourage you to have Frank also here down the road. He's now Frank Harris. He's now the executive director of 210 City Fans. So maybe sometime when he's got his, feet wet in there, he'd probably be a pretty good interview from his perspective as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely working on it. I talked to him last week, so hopefully we can set some time to have him on, because I think the audience would love that. And yeah, I want to understand the collectives a little bit more. I think us sort of being on the outside just kind of looks at it, and all we see is the headlines on ESPN and the Bleachers Report and on the Athletic about what crazy story has happened. But I think hearing from
you, and they
you,
keep changing too. The laws are changing, like what we're able to do, what we can accomplish. Every 6 months, it's something new. So,
do you foresee any big? I know I said I was wrapping up, but this is the last question, I promise. Do you see any big changes that are coming that could put restrictions on some of the transfer portal stuff, or put more restrictions on this NIL thing? I think a lot of folks are obviously concerned about it getting out of hand and folks being poached and that sort of thing. Do you see anything on the horizon that's coming?
I wish I knew more about the transfer portal to be able to discuss it. All I can talk about is NIL and restrictions, overseeing that directly. And the only thing that frightened us for a nanosecond was the IRS coming out to say this last summer, he's taking away the nonprofit status of NILs. He feels aren't operating appropriately. They shouldn't be tax write-offs. I literally pay for an attorney on retainer who works with NILs. So that's me paying for the overhead, so nobody else has to pay for the overhead. And I phoned her up so fast. I was like, is this us? Is this us? And she's like, fine. She's like, just make sure you document, promote all the nonprofit stuff that these guys are doing. And it doesn't look like we give a quarterback $1 million. He's driving a Ferrari and doesn't do any nonprofit work, right? Those are the people who are standing out to them. They're not even fulfilling their obligation, and they're just getting paid. And so that she's like, that's what the kerfuffle is. That it's like an old word, kerfuffle. And so I would imagine though that it's not the last time it'll be brought up. It'll come back up. Taxing situations on it will be brought up again. I just need to keep my eye on it to see if it ever does convert or not. I do see some discussion, and I hear it a lot about limitations on how much someone can make, like almost like a salary cap, but not a salary cap for the team per se. It would be individual. This is the most you can pay an individual. I don't know if that'll actually work, because then you would have to tell the university you are limited to how much you can make off of the individual. The point was to give them both equal opportunity. So those are things that are probably being discussed. It is out of hand. It is out of control. It has changed college football. I even personally have my own love-hate relationship with it. I love making sure these guys can pay for food, rent, all that kind of stuff. I love that part. That I am here for that. This paying you a million to steal you from another team, I'm not quite the fan of that. I liked it better, like the coach, the environment. God bless that kid for taking it. I probably would too. So there's no blame on him. Someone gives you $1 million. What are you going to do?
Yeah, gonna take it.
Let's go. I may break my leg this season, and then what? So, but I don't know what the solution is. But I guarantee there'll be things popping up in the news to try to get their hands around it. I'm just not sure how they're going to do it.
Yeah, neither am I. We come up with 1,000 theories on this channel all the time about that. But yes, 210inspired.org. Everybody, make sure you guys go check it out and get your donations in. But April, thank you so much for doing this. This was extremely helpful for me. I'm sure it's helpful for a lot of the folks in the audience. And yeah, this was great.
Thank you. We'll see you later.
All right, see you guys.